The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the ceiling fan. 2 suitcases stood by the door, neatly packed and zipped. Claire stood with her arms crossed, her voice calm but cold. "We're going tomorrow, Mom. I have sold your beach house." Elena froze. Her hand trembled slightly as she held a cup of tea. The warmth did nothing to stop the chill that ran through her chest. She looked at her daughter not in anger but in disbelief. The beach house had been her life's comfort, her late husband's dream, and the place where Claire took her first steps. But now it was gone. What Claire did not know was that her mother had already seen this coming. And she had quietly prepared for it. Before we go deeper, make sure you subscribe for more true-to-life stories that reveal what people never see coming. Elena Brooks was a retired literature teacher who had spent over 40 years helping students fall in love with words. After her husband passed away, she found peace in their small coastal home in Crescent Bay. The house sat on a gentle slope overlooking the sea, with white shutters and a garden full of lavender and roses that her husband once planted. Every summer the air smelled of salt and flowers. Elena would sit by the porch with a book in her lap and a warm mug beside her. Her days were simple, predictable, and beautifully quiet. Claire, her only daughter, lived in the city. She worked long hours at a marketing firm, always chasing deadlines and promotions. When she visited, she often arrived with her fiancé, Evan, a tall man with polite smiles and restless eyes. They would stay for the weekend, enjoy the ocean breeze, and then rush back to their world of traffic, noise, and deadlines. But lately, Claire had started to complain more. "Mom, this place is falling apart," she said one evening, standing near the cracked garden wall. "You cannot keep living here alone. You need something smaller, easier to maintain." Elena smiled. "It is not falling apart, sweetheart. It just needs care. Like people do." Claire sighed. "You do not understand, Mom. The taxes, the maintenance, the distance from the city, it is too much. You could sell this, move closer to me. You would have everything you need." Elena listened quietly. She had heard similar words before, but this time they carried a certain urgency. There was something in Claire's tone, something practical but sharp. Over the next few visits the topic came up again and again. Claire would talk about how property values were high, how the market was perfect, and how she could help manage the sale. Elena began to notice how Claire's fiancé always checked his phone when money was mentioned. One night, while setting the dinner table, Elena overheard their whispered conversation on the porch. Evan's voice was low. "Once it is sold, we can clear the debt. You said she trusts you." Claire's reply was softer. "She will not see it coming. I just need to convince her." The words cut deeper than any ocean wave ever could. That night, Elena sat in the living room surrounded by the quiet ticking of the old clock. Her husband's portrait hung above the fireplace. His eyes, kind and steady, seemed to watch her. She whispered to the photo, "They think I do not understand." Over the next few days she began to make small, deliberate moves. She met with an old friend, a lawyer she once helped when he was just a student in her literature class. His name was Mr. Carter, and he now managed estate documents for several retired professors. "Mrs. Brooks," he said gently after listening to her story, "you need to protect yourself. I can help make sure no one sells anything without your knowledge." Elena smiled faintly. "I would appreciate that." Together they reviewed every property paper, every signature, every authorization. Quietly they made adjustments. The ownership of the beach house was transferred into a private trust, with Elena as the sole beneficiary. Only she and Mr. Carter knew. When Claire visited the following weekend, she was cheerful, almost too cheerful. "Mom," she said, "I might have found someone interested in buying this place. A family from San Diego. They want something quiet with an ocean view." Elena's expression did not change. "That sounds lovely," she replied softly. Claire did not notice the knowing calm in her mother's voice. She was too focused on the numbers, the price, and the future she imagined with that money. A few weeks passed and the discussions grew more intense. Claire spoke about deposits, buyers, and contracts. Elena nodded, cooked meals, and watched the sea as if nothing had changed. But inside, she was preparing for the moment her daughter would cross the line, the moment she would reveal who she had truly become. "Mom," she said flatly, "we are going tomorrow. I have sold your beach house." For a second, time seemed to stop. The words hung in the air like a weight pressing down. The vase slipped from Elena's hands and shattered on the floor. Water and petals spread across the tiles, but she did not move. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. She looked at her daughter, her expression full of quiet disbelief. "You did what?" Claire sighed, already annoyed. "Mom, this place is draining you. You are wasting money on memories. You have no idea how much maintenance costs are eating away at your savings." "I did what had to be done." Elena steadied herself against the table. Her heart was racing, not just with shock but with something deeper: suspicion. "You had no right to sell what is not yours," she said softly. Claire frowned. "I had full power of attorney for financial decisions. You signed it last year when you were unwell. I checked everything with the real estate agent. It is done. The buyer wired the deposit yesterday." Elena's mind began to spin. She remembered signing documents when she had been ill after her surgery. Claire had handled her bills then. That was when the trust papers had been quietly updated by her lawyer friend, Mr. Carter. The beach house was never listed under her current name. Still, she kept her voice calm. "Show me the papers." Claire hesitated, then opened her email and passed her phone. The sale agreement flashed across the screen. The address was correct. The signature matched hers perfectly, but something looked strange. The buyer's company name was Harbor Line Estates, yet Elena remembered no such agency being active in their region. "Who handled this?" Elena asked. "Mr. Benson. He is a top agent in the city. Evan knows him from work," Claire said, crossing her arms. Elena nodded slowly. "And you said the deposit is sent?" "Yes," Claire replied, glancing at her phone. "It is already done. We leave tomorrow morning." Elena sat down, the air heavy between them. She stared at the sea through the window, its surface calm, pretending she was too tired to argue. Inside, she was already putting the pieces together. Claire thought she had power. But the paper she signed, the authority she claimed, all led back to a name she had never known, a name that belonged only to Elena's past. The house was not registered under Elena Brooks. It was under Elena Merelli, her maiden name, placed into a trust 15 years ago. That trust could not be sold or transferred without her direct approval. Elena's heart hurt, not from the betrayal but from what this moment revealed. Her daughter had not only lost respect for her mother's memories but had also traded integrity for convenience. As Claire left the room to pack, Elena whispered to herself, "You think you have taken everything. You will see what you truly took." She waited until the door closed before picking up her phone. Her fingers trembled slightly as she called the old number she had not used in years. A calm male voice answered. "Mrs. Brooks? Or should I say Mrs. Merelli?" Elena exhaled with relief. "Mr. Hayes. It is time." "If only she knew who really signed those papers," he replied quietly. 2 decades earlier, when Elena's husband was alive, he had often worried about taxes and inheritance. The beach house had been his masterpiece, built from their savings, painted by his own hands, and legally protected through careful planning. At that time, their lawyer, Mr. Hayes, advised them to create a trust under Elena's maiden name for security. It was meant to protect their family home from any financial mistakes or disputes. The property could never be sold without both trustees' written consent, and since her husband had passed away, that authority rested with her alone. When Claire was young, she had no idea about any of this. To her, the beach house was simply home, full of sunlight, laughter, and the smell of the sea. Elena never told her about the legal side because she wanted Claire to remember it as a place of joy, not paperwork. Now, sitting in her study, Elena opened a wooden box. Inside was an envelope her husband had left behind. She had read it only once after his funeral. The ink had faded, but the message stayed clear. "My dear Elena," it began, "if life ever turns unkind and the people we love lose their way, remember this home was built not for profit but for peace. Protect it with wisdom and never let anyone trade your memories for money." She closed the letter gently, her eyes misty. For the first time in years, she felt his presence beside her, calm and steady. That afternoon, Mr. Hayes came to visit. His hair was gray now, but his tone was sharp as ever. "She cannot sell what she does not own," he said. "The documents she signed have no legal power. The trust predates her authority." Elena nodded. "Then let it unfold. Do not stop the sale yet. Let them think it is real." Mr. Hayes raised an eyebrow. "You want them to walk into their own storm?" "Yes," she said softly. Let her understand what it feels like to lose something she never valued. He smiled faintly. You have always had patience, Mrs. Merelli. As the evening light filled the room, Elena looked out at the horizon. The sea stretched endlessly, calm yet powerful. In that quiet moment she decided she would not confront Claire immediately. She would let the truth speak for itself. Because sometimes, lessons are not taught with words. They are learned when the illusion finally collapses. The sail was already in motion, but the storm was only beginning. The next few days passed in quiet motion. Claire was busy with phone calls, scheduling movers and updating her friends about the sale. Elena stayed mostly silent. She moved through the house like a shadow, fragile in appearance but alert inside. Each morning she prepared tea for her daughter, asked simple questions and smiled faintly when Claire gave short answers. It was the performance of a lifetime. She let Claire believe she was broken, tired and ready to leave everything behind. But in truth, Elena was working quietly behind the scenes. Every night after Claire went to bed, she sat at her desk with her reading glasses and a folder of documents. She reviewed bank accounts, old papers and letters. She created new ones too. She opened 2 new savings accounts under her trust name, Elena Merelli. Then she transferred her remaining funds there. The small pension she received each month now went directly into those accounts. No one, not even Claire, could trace them. She also contacted Mr. Hayes, her old lawyer friend, to begin the legal process. Together they started to prepare the papers that would expose the truth once the fake sale reached the final stage. Hayes promised to handle everything discreetly. During the day, Elena visited the town's youth art center, a small building near the coast where local children came to paint. The director, a kind woman named Julia, welcomed her warmly. At first, Elena only came to watch, but soon she began to help. She showed the children how to mix colors, how to hold their brushes gently, how to see beauty even in mistakes. They laughed and splashed paint everywhere, and for the first time in months, Elena felt her heart lighten. One boy painted a small blue house by the sea and smiled shyly as he showed it to her. "It looks like your place," he said. Elena smiled back. "Yes, it does. And it will always be mine." When she returned home, Claire barely looked up from her laptop. She was too busy discussing sale documents with her fiancé. Elena quietly watched her daughter from across the room, noticing how her voice carried a hint of impatience, even arrogance. She thought about the girl Claire used to be. The one who ran barefoot through the garden, collecting shells and laughter. That memory hurt more than the betrayal itself. Late that night, Elena stood on the porch and looked out at the ocean. The sky was calm and endless. She whispered to herself, "Let her have her illusion for now. The sea always returns what is lost." Inside, she turned off the lights, leaving only the sound of the waves and the faint ticking of the clock. She had made her choice. The plan was in motion. Patience was her power now. 2 weeks later, the storm finally broke. It started with a phone call. Claire's voice came from the other room, sharp and panicked. "What do you mean the sale is invalid?" Elena sat quietly in the kitchen, stirring her tea. Claire rushed in, holding her phone tightly. "Mom, something is wrong. The lawyer says the trust is in another name. They say the property is not legally yours." "How is that possible?" Elena looked up calmly. "Perhaps you should ask Mr. Hayes. He knows the details." Claire froze. "You knew?" Elena nodded slowly. "I knew you were trying to sell something that was never yours to sell." The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. Claire turned pale, muttering something about calling her fiancé. She stepped outside, but when she returned, her face had changed. "He is gone," she whispered. "Evan says he wants nothing to do with this." Within days, the fake buyer filed a fraud complaint. News spread quickly through the city. Claire's company found out and placed her on leave. Her colleagues whispered behind her back and the stress began to show. Elena moved quietly out of the beach house before the legal chaos began. She rented a small apartment near the art center. It was modest, with white curtains and a balcony overlooking the water. Every morning she walked to the center to help the children paint. She had peace now. The air was lighter, her steps slower but certain. She often watched the ocean and thought of her husband, feeling his presence in every wave. Weeks later there was a knock at her door. When she opened it, Claire stood there. Her clothes were wrinkled, her eyes red, and her voice barely above a whisper. "Mom," she said, her pride gone. Can I stay for a while? Elena looked at her daughter for a long moment. The girl who once sold her memories now stood with nothing but regret. She stepped aside and said softly, "Come in." As the door closed behind them, the sound of the sea filled the silence again. This time it was not the sound of loss. It was the sound of truth finding its way home. Claire sat across from her mother, her face pale, eyes red and voice shaking. The walls felt too close, too silent. She had lost everything: her fiancé, her job, her reputation. For once, the proud tone in her voice was gone. "Mom," she whispered, "why did this happen? Why did you let it?" Elena looked at her for a long moment, her hands calm on the table. There was no anger in her eyes, only a deep sadness that seemed older than words. She finally spoke, her voice steady. "Claire, I tried to warn you. That house you tried to sell was never truly yours to sell." Claire frowned, confused. "What are you talking about? My name was on the papers." Elena nodded. "Yes. Because you forged it. You forged my signature, Claire." Her tone was firm, but there was no cruelty in it. "Mr. Hayes found everything during the legal review. The trust was in my name and always meant to be passed down only under certain conditions." Claire's eyes widened. She opened her mouth but could not find the words. Her body trembled. I just wanted to make a new start. I wanted more than that old house by the sea." Elena sighed softly. "You sold bricks and wood, but you never built a home." The words hung in the air, heavy yet gentle. "I kept quiet because I wanted you to see what you were really building: your life on greed, not love. I hoped the storm would clear your sight." Tears streamed down Claire's face. "I ruined everything. Thought I was smarter. I thought money would make things right." Elena reached out and placed her hand on her daughter's. "It is never too late to rebuild. You just need to start with your own heart first." She reached into her bag and took out a simple form. It was a volunteer application from the Youth Art Center. Claire stared at it, unsure. "You want me to work there?" Elena smiled gently. "It is not work. It is healing. Those children have nothing but still create beauty every day. You might learn something from them." Claire held the form, her tears falling on the paper. For the first time she did not resist. She nodded slowly. "I will try, Mom." Elena's eyes softened. "That is all I ever wanted. For you to try, not to win." The camera would fade on Claire's face, a mix of shame and relief, as if she was finally seeing her mother for who she truly was, not as an obstacle, but as a quiet teacher. This was not just a moment of defeat. It was the beginning of understanding. Months passed. The beach house, once sold and almost lost, stood quietly by the water again. Its paint had faded in the sun, but it felt alive with the sound of brushes and laughter. Claire stood on a ladder, repainting the porch rail with her mother beside her. The tension between them had melted into something new: peace. The sea breeze carried the scent of salt and renewal. "Do you ever miss how it used to be?" Claire asked softly. Elena smiled. "No. I think I like how it is now. We built this together, not just the house but us." At the art center, Claire had found a rhythm she never knew she needed. Teaching children to paint, she learned patience and purpose. Every brushstroke was like an apology she never had to speak. In the background, soft piano music swelled as Elena's narration came in. "Sometimes life takes away everything so we can learn what truly matters. Money fades. Beauty fades. But love, effort, and forgiveness, they last longer than any house ever could." The final scene showed Claire standing at the shore, the sunset glowing behind her. She turned, smiled at her mother, and placed the beach house keys in her hand. "I think these belong to you again," she said. Elena looked at the keys, then at her daughter. "No, Claire. They belong to us." As the waves rolled in, the screen slowly faded to golden light. Elena's voice returned one last time, calm and reflective. "Sometimes we teach not by punishing, but by allowing the storm to clear what should never have been built. We all lose something in life, but what matters is what we build after." Soft music rose under her words as images of the seaside sunset played the repaired porch, the children laughing at the art center, the ocean glowing in the fading light. "Forgiveness," she said, "is not about forgetting. It is about choosing to build again, stronger and kinder than before." The story faded into black and gentle text appeared on screen. "If this story touched your heart, Subscribe and join our growing family of listeners who believe every story hides a lesson worth remembering. Then the outro card appeared. Next week's story: the necklace she sold for $5 and the secret it carried. A soft chime played as the screen faded out completely, leaving viewers silent, reflective, and ready for the next story.